Good evening, everybody. My name is Michael Freeston. I am Director of Quality Improvement at the Early Years Alliance, and I'm delighted you're joining us today for this initial webinar under the new London Early Years Business Support Programme, being delivered by the Early Years Alliance and CEDA and supported by the Mayor of London. Thank you for spending your Tuesday evening with us. I'm delighted to be joined by my colleagues Shannon Pite and Melanie Pilcher, and I'll just ask them to introduce themselves, please, with job titles.
Hello everybody, my name is Melanie Pilcher. I'm Quality and Standards Manager for the Alliance.
And hi everyone, I'm Shannon Pite and I'm Communications and External Affairs Director at the Alliance.
Thank you both. They will be giving you the information in terms of updates today. We've titled today's session the London Early Years Update Policy and Practice Information for London's PVI Providers. The aims of today's session is to give you that update in terms of the current policy and practice requirements from DFE and Ofsted. And I'd like to suggest, Shannon, Melanie, that actually things are calming down a bit now. You've had a year of it, haven't you both, in terms of weekly, daily changes with information going out. But are we coming down the slope now? Is that a fair comment, that we're on the back of the bell curve?
Very gratefully received, yes.
Very gratefully. So yes, we will try and give people an update on where we stand today in terms of policy and practice updates from DFE and Ofsted. But also, these are your sessions, please, colleagues who've joined us, and we'd like you to share your reflections on how provision has responded, excuse my typo there, to the pandemic and the challenges that you feel coming ahead, because that leads very neatly into my input from today, in as much that this is introducing a new project funded by the Mayor of London, which is under the snappy title, and we'll come to that later, of the London Early Years Business Support Programme, and the help that I want to introduce, that the help it can offer to PVI providers as they recover from the pandemic and look to thrive into the future. So we're giving you an update of current situations in terms of policy and practice, but also we'd like to share with you the opportunities for help that we can provide and other providers within the project can provide over the coming months. But also, this is your session to inform us and to help shape the project going forward. So, as you can see us, this is just by way of summary in terms of who your hosts today. There's the three of us. That's an earlier lockdown haircut, Melanie, you had on that one. That's fine.
Definitely, yes.
A few hairdos ago. There we go. Okay. I'll hand over to Shannon then in the first instance in terms of giving us the COVID-19 latest updates. Thanks very much, Shannon.
Thanks, Michael. I think, as you rightly pointed out, after a long period of, I think it was daily updates and changes to the guidance, we've started to come to a calmer period. So there's only a few updates that have been made to the what I call actions for early years, so actions for early years and childcare providers during the coronavirus outbreak, DFE guidance that came out earlier this month, mostly to tie in with the movement down the roadmap out of lockdown on the 17th of May. So the first is a bit of clarification around external visitors, and by external visitors, I mean professionals. So it was confirmation that specialists, therapists and clinicians and other support staff for children with SEND can and should continue to provide interventions as usual, and that they can move between settings, but they should continue to take the precautions that you would expect. So social distancing, minimising contact, and wearing any necessary PPE. I think most settings would have kind of assumed that from the previous guidance, so it was a bit of a clarification so there could be no confusion on that point.
Can I just ask of participants, are they getting visitors in for children with particular needs or anything else, just in terms of sharing your experiences? Because we're a training provider of the Early Years Alliance as well, and so there has been some nervousness on the part of managers in terms of assessors, for example, going in to see how apprentices or other learners are taking place. And I'd just be interested to see what the feeling is from participants here. So if you can give some comments into the chat, that would be great. Debbie has said that the SALT is due to visit next month. Excellent. Joanne said no. The inclusion team has been in. Thank you, Shannon. I'll interrupt as we go on. Thank you.
Yeah, all good. Another small update was on organised performances at settings. So pre-17th of May, providers were told they shouldn't host live in-person performances with an audience. But as of the 17th of May, the guidance was updated to say that performances can take place in line with government guidance, general government guidance on performing arts, which is things like using microphones where possible, so you're not having to project, ensuring that singers and performers are 2 meters apart. So that's just a change that was made. There was a change that was made about baby and toddler groups, or parent and child groups, as they're referred to in government guidance, with relation to singing. I don't know how many parent and child groups we have this evening, but if you are one, you probably know that the government's been going back and forth on singing rules. It was banned, and then it was allowed a little bit, and now it's allowed a little bit more. So as of the 17th of May, parent and child groups can meet in groups of 30, and that does not include any children under 5. And for singing, if you are a group that's operating indoors, no more than 6 adults, including the group leader, should sing along with the children. Those are the government rules. If you are meeting outdoors, as of the 17th of May, you can sing in groups of 30. And again, the argument behind that the DfE give is all about that projection, and that the more people you have singing in an indoor space, the more droplets are getting spread in that space, and the more risk of the virus being transmitted.
I've just before we move on, and I'm going to come back to that about baby and toddler groups in a second. Patricia has asked, can I verify the guidance after the send sentence? Does that also mean other professionals? So does this include early years advisors from the local authority, re-quality visits requested by the providers?
Patricia, when I finish my section, I will double check the guidance and put it in the chat, hopefully in response to if I can work out how to do it, because I think there is a slightly separate section for more general external visitors. So I'll double check that, and hopefully I can try and reply to you. Thank you.
That's very kind. And also Bola has put in there, and does it include business support advisors as well? I assume that's going to be the same thing. So if you wouldn't mind, Shannon, that would be really kind.
I will try and post the exact text so then we can see who it applies to. And then the
can I just, sorry, can I,
no.
Yeah, I got transfixed about the singing.
But I knew you'd pick up on this, Michael.
Yeah, well, it was just when the numbers of 30 for baby and toddler and groups, was that only out, is that, if you're not singing, if you're not going to do any singing, what's the number indoors for a baby and toddler group?
It's 30.
It is 30?
It's 30, not including the children.
Ah, wow.
Yes, it's a big number.
So more than the rule of 6 in that sense.
Yeah, and I was at a DfE meeting recently when someone queried it and asked, well, if there's a rule of 6 generally, how can it be so high? And they said that was the decision taken at a policy level. So yeah, it was 15, and then as of the 17th of May, it became 30 indoors and outdoors.
As long as they don't sing.
As long as indoors you don't sing in a group of more than 6.
Right.
Very simple.
Thank you. No, that's really helpful.
No problem.
Nalia has just said advisory teachers from Barnet are visiting settings. Thank you. That's really helpful to know.
And the final kind of significant update was confirmation query. We had a lot on childminders and whether or not they could meet with other childminders. And the DfE confirmed that yes, they can, both indoors and outdoors, which is something we sought clarity on for a little while. When it is reasonably necessary to do so, there's no explicit description of what that would refer to, without being restricted on limits to gatherings, as long as it's for the purpose of childcare and general good practices followed. For example, if you're going on a trip, hand washing, socially distancing with other people, general hygiene and things like that. So I know a lot of childminders were very keen to know what the rules were, so it was good to get clarity on that.
Smashing. Ryan has also just added that advisory teachers in Haringey are visiting settings. So that's handy to know. Thank you. And Patricia says we've been visiting re-safeguarding and complaints visits and under requests of Lado and Ofsted, but wanted to know non-statutory requirements. That's handy to know. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you, everybody.
And then as lockdown eases, we have had some queries about how the general guidance in relation to earliest providers will change, because obviously Indian variant notwithstanding, the aim is for the majority of restrictions to ease on the 21st of June. So people have asked, well, what does that mean for things like guidance on children attending more than one setting, the current guidance on parents entering settings, things like messy play. And we've raised this to the DfE, and they have said that they are working with the Department of Health and Social Care to update actions for early years in line with the general easing of lockdown restrictions. So those types of issues will be, hopefully, we'll get an update on that quite soon as to, I know a lot of settings say they're not overly in a rush to invite parents back into the setting, but if you wanted to, if you were able to do so for drop off and pick up, if the guidance on messy play, which at the moment in fairness is about risk assessment and keeping to small groups, if that will be eased. So it was just to kind of flag up that we have put this on the DfE's radar, and they will be updating the guidance in line with the general lockdown easing.
Thank you. There's just an interesting question that's coming from Yazidi. If we have guidance on temperatures after the 21st of June, will we be able to treat teething babies as teething babies rather than suffering from COVID? Melanie? Yeah,
funnily enough, we had this question just the other day, so I did have to check my facts before I answered. But the guidance is basically that they say that teething doesn't necessarily cause temperature in babies anyway. This is what the DfE is saying, although I know some of us would argue that. And the other thing that's linked to that is for children who've had their routine vaccinations, they quite often will have a temperature after a routine vaccination, and where that's the case, it should just be treated as a normal temperature, and Calpol can be given for children under the age of 2. However, if there are any suspicions whatsoever that it may be COVID, then obviously it's got to be that those rules have got to be followed for exclusion.
Just had a question in from Simon, and I might have missed it earlier on when you were explaining, and it's probably one to Mel to elaborate on what Melanie, what Shannon said. Where are we on resources and messy play now? Recognizing that further guidance is yet to be confirmed, this has been an issue throughout the whole process, hasn't it, in terms of what should settings be doing with their, what resources, what about sand?
Yes, I think actually most providers have found a way around it, and if that's the case, if you're using individual resources for individual children, then carry on doing so. But to be honest, I haven't recently looked at the guidance to see if it's changed.
It hasn't, Mel. So you're still right. It just says you should risk assess activities. Right. Materials can be handled by a consistent group. Make sure children wash their hands. So it's as it has been throughout the pandemic.
Great. Thank you both. Very helpful from Melanie Widnall, just giving an update in terms of the side effects of routine vaccination or teething. That's very helpful. Thank you, Melanie. Clearly, either you wrote that very quickly or or that's taken from somewhere you had to hand. Thank you very much. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen.
That's not me, as Melanie.
No, that's not you. No, I thought it probably would have been when it
I would love to take credit for that, because that's very sound advice there. So
Sandra has been saying that they have sand given in bubbles, and each child has their own Play-Doh in each bubble, and I think that's been very common. Thank you, Sandra. That's very helpful. COVID-19 testing, Shannon.
Yeah. So this is about lateral flow tests, which I think everyone would know are the tests that you take when you aren't showing symptoms. And all nurseries and preschools are now able to access the kind of education testing program and receive deliveries of test kits. Childminders are also able to access lateral flow testing, but they go through the route for individuals. They don't get it through the education testing program. So the update today is just in relation to nurseries and preschools. The main change that's happened recently, which people should have received an email directly about from the DfE, is that you now have to order the test yourself. So before, you would receive your kind of ongoing test kits automatically, and that has changed. And in order to place an order, you need a unique organisation number, which is an 8-digit number, which hopefully everyone has received. I know there was a bit of a technical glitch, so people may have received about 50 emails telling them over and over and over again what their unique organisation number is. If for some reason you haven't received that email, there is a website you can look it up on, and I can pop it in the chat afterwards if anyone needs that. There are cut-off dates each week to receive the the test the following week, which is,
right.
It was 5 p.m. on a Wednesday, and it's now 5 p.m. on a Tuesday. So essentially, if you have placed your order before 5 p.m. today, you will get your next set of test kits for your settings at the beginning of next week. Right. If you haven't, you will receive it at the beginning of the following week. And each set of test kits are meant to last, based on the number of staff at your settings, for 3.5 weeks. So it's worth having a reminder in your email a little bit ahead of time. Give yourselves a few days grace to make sure you order it, so you don't get left in a situation where you've actually run out of test kits and you can't get your next order for an extra week. So it's a 5 p.m. Tuesday cutoff. I was conscious of doing a Tuesday 6 p.m. webinar and saying about a 5 p.m. cutoff. So I'm really sorry
actually, if
week.
Somebody now does that, they won't get them until the week commencing the 7th of June.
That's correct. That's exactly it.
Right.
So it is really worth making sure you can meet those deadlines.
Thank you.
Another point that was raised was in discussions with the DfE is the importance of continuing to take lateral flow tests even if you've been vaccinated. There's a little bit of concern, and it's not restricted to the earlier sector, that because the vaccination programme is running out of pace and is going so positively, people feel that, oh, I've got my 2 vaccines, I'm all good, no need to do the test. And the government has stressed that testing and vaccines are meant to work in conjunction, because vaccines, as brilliant as they are, aren't 100%. And so it would be useful if all setting leaders could emphasise to staff that even if they have been vaccinated, and they have been vaccinated already, and that's twice a week, I can see to Linda's questions, that's twice a week testing, that they should still be testing twice a week as well and reporting their results to the NHS system. And then the final point on testing is a small update to Action for Early Years that was just kind of added in to say that if you take a lateral flow test and it's positive, and then you take a PCR test, which is the test you take normally when you have symptoms, to confirm that the lateral flow test is accurate, you should take that within 2 days. That wasn't in the old version of the guidance. So if you take a lateral flow test and it is positive, you need to take a PCR test to confirm that positive. If the PCR test is negative, it overrides the lateral flow test. Right. And you can return to your setting as normal, stop self-isolating. If it's positive, obviously then you've had 2 positive tests, you're positive. But the guidance didn't used to give a time limit on that, and it now says that you need to take that PCR within 2 days. So it's just something I wanted to write.
Thank you, that's really helpful. Is that a situation that relates to us as a profession, or is that just the guidance for people generally, that if you get a positive lateral flow test, you should take a PCR? Is that different to professions, or is it the general advice to the population?
Yeah, I would have to check that, Michael. I know it's the guidance for the education programme testing, right, because lateral flow tests, I mean, they're very useful, but there are some concerns about being done in a home testing situation that, you might not carry it out quite right, you might not scrub your tonsil quite right. So they need that PCR test. We'll have to check if that was the same for the general public.
Question from Aileen. A bubble doesn't have to close while waiting for the PCR test, as a question.
We have a query in with the DfE on that, because we've received that a couple of times, Aileen. As far as we're aware, a lateral flow positive is treated as a positive until it is proven otherwise. Right. It would mean that you would have to close the bubble. However, at the Alliance, we don't like to say anything until we've got something in writing or it's in guidance. So we are looking at trying to get confirmation from the DfE on that. We have a page on the website called Operating During the Pandemic and Beyond. It's an FAQ page where we keep those updates, and we'll update it on there. Michael will know, we may update it directly through this programme as well, so that London providers specifically get that update, but it's something we're chasing on, in short.
Thank you, that's really helpful, Shannon. Thank you very much.
And then the final update is just a quick one on funding. There's not much change to report, but it's just confirmation in case anyone needed it about how funding was working in the summer and autumn terms. So we know at the beginning of the year, there was the January 2021 census, and that was done based on the number of children registered at a setting as opposed to the number of children physically attending the setting, so that those children who were self-isolating or off sick or whose parents still did not feel comfortable for them to attend would still be counted as normally attending that setting. So in the summer and autumn terms, rather than being based on the January census, funding will be based on termly counts. So essentially, because obviously with the pandemic, the number of children attending settings is slowly increasing. The idea is that each term, the local authority will do a count of the number of children attending a setting based on the same premise as the January 2021 census, i.e. those children that would normally be attending. And the DfE have confirmed that that's how funding will work for the summer term this year and the autumn term. We haven't had any update as to how funding will work in the spring term next year. And I would assume that that would very much be based on how the pandemic is looking at the time.
Smashing. Just Christiana has asked, and would you type it into the website again, the reference to the Alliance's Q&A page?
Yeah.
That would be really helpful.
This is my last slide before passing over to Mel, so I can head and do that now. That's no problem.
Great. Thank you very much. Just a question that Anita, if we're not operating in bubbles, would the whole setting have to close if someone tests positive, or is it only that person self-isolating?
So that's the same question, Anita, that we've got in similar to Aileen's, which is if someone gets a positive lateral flow test and they haven't yet had their PCR test, what does that mean for the bubble if bubbles are operating, or the setting if you're not operating in bubbles? So that's the question that we'll chase the DfE on, and the link that I'm going to send to Christiana will update it there.
Great. Thank you very much, Shannon. Right. That's got us to where we are in terms of the regulatory requirements relating to COVID-19. Thank you very much. Melanie, it's not as though the world has stood still in terms of the development of early education policy as well for this period of time. So over to you in terms of developments around the early years foundation stage and Ofsted.
Okay, so I'm really just going to give you the headlines here. As both Shannon and Michael have mentioned, you know, things are starting to feel like we can look ahead to September, and certainly despite some calls from people in the sector to actually postpone the introduction of the revised early years foundation stage, it is coming in, and it will be mandatory from September 2021. So the changes, really, just a few headlines here. The early learning goals have been revised, and the educational programs, which is really our big concern within the early years sector, because that's what we're concerned with, that's what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, have been expanded. There have been some updates to the safeguarding and welfare requirements, not many. Most of them were made simply to update things that have come in since the last EYFS update in 2017. So it's things like reference to local safeguarding partners instead of local safeguarding children's boards. So you might just want to review your policies and procedures just to make sure that where terminology has changed in the safeguarding and welfare requirements, that you're up to date, because obviously you need to show that you are working to those local procedures. That emphasis on paperwork reduction has offered us an opportunity to really reinforce the key principles of the EYFS, and hopefully you'll be joining us in June when we'll really talk about this in more detail as we consider how you prepare for September and how you prepare for your future Ofsted inspections. That new non-statutory guidance, I'm sure most of you will be aware by now that there is a new development matters. I won't refer to it as a revised development matters because it is completely different from the 2012 version. So it is a new development matters, which many people will have seen by now. That's been in the public domain since 2020. And also, of course, a new non-statutory guidance, an alternative, or you can use both if you wish, which is birth to 5 matters. So I would urge any of you out there just to have a look at the non-statutory guidance and just get a feel for what works for you. Okay, and the one thing I haven't put on the slide there as well, which is new in the revised early learning foundation stage, is the reception baseline assessment. which also comes in from September. Now, the reception baseline assessment is carried out by the school. It is carried out within the first 6 weeks in which the child actually starts their formal education, their school in reception. So we don't have to concern ourselves with that at all, but it is in the new EYFS, so you just want to make yourselves aware of that as well. Okay, if we can move on then, Michael. And just a little bit about Ofsted. Again, just the headlines here. So Ofsted resumed its on-site inspections from the 4th of May, but they have been prioritising their work. So they have been very much about settings that haven't been inspected for a long time, settings about whom there has been concerns raised whilst they haven't been doing their full inspections. So they are risk assessing and prioritising their work at the moment. The new 6-year window for inspections is now in force. So again, at the moment, it's all the waters are a little bit muddy because, of course, Ofsted are playing catch up. And as I said before, they are prioritising their inspections at the moment. So Ofsted are very keen to note that they will carry out urgent inspections if they have significant concerns about a provider. And also they have in place a system for those people that want to register new provision as well, to make sure that actually that we can do that. There are no delays in doing that. The other thing of note, which sort of came in quite quietly really, was that last month, I believe it was, the Early Years Inspection Handbook was updated. Now, this was part 1 of the handbook only, and it's just to reflect the ongoing situation with COVID. So nothing in part 2 of the handbook has been changed. So the inspection judgments remain the same. The criteria for the inspector making those judgments remains the same. But in part 1 of the handbook, when they talk about how the inspector prepares for inspection and how they will actually behave or what they will do in order to meet your safety requirements whilst they're inspecting, those things have all been updated.
Smashing. Thank you, Melanie. A couple of questions that I'll just put in there. And first one, I'll start with Sandra, because we need to reflect on the fact that we are focusing on the new EYFS and Ofsted in our session on the 29th of January. I'll come on to that in due course. But she asks, I understand from my borough's early years director that Ofsted will not be expecting observations in Learning Journal or Tapestry. Other online assessment processes are available during the inspection, but rather practitioners talking about the child. Can you confirm indeed this will be the case? I can see you smiling already.
Yeah, when the education inspection framework came in 2019, when it was renewed, all these things were put in place anyway. So in effect, Ofsted had all its ducks in a row ready for the new early years foundation stage. And they have been saying for the past 3 years that they want to observe practice. They don't want to read about practice. They want to observe practice. They want to know that educators in the setting have know what they want for that child, know about that child, can talk about that child, can talk about where that child is in their learning and development. They do not want to read about it. They haven't done for a long time. So if you're doing observations and assessments as part of your, I don't want to say tracking, because we're kind of moving away from that a little bit as well. But as long as you know what that child, where that child's at, where they started and what they need next, you don't have to have paperwork in place to prove that.
There is a greater emphasis on the professional judgments and the professional discussions with staff. So it's what they will observe and what they will get in those discussions. And that sets challenges, but I think it should be seen as a great opportunity to be able to really articulate what the curriculum means for the children in your care. So again, you're doing a big promo for that for us, Sandra, because that's exactly what the session on the 29th of June is going to cover. A couple of technical questions. Emma, does the new 6-year window start from the date of your last inspection, which is a bit of a movable feast anyway, isn't it, from any setting?
Yes, yes. At the moment, what Ofsted have said, they're sort of resetting the clock from when inspections stopped last March. So really, in terms of where you are in the window, will depend on how long ago your last inspection was, and if there've been any concerns about you in the meantime.
Great, thank you. Yazidi has just asked, will the slides be shared or added to the EY website? The recording will be on the EY website whilst we're still developing the project website, and we will share the slides with everybody who has registered. So as I said at the beginning, please don't feel like you're scrabbling to write everything down. Thank you. Can someone provide a link to the register? I will get, Eileen, I'll be with you shortly. Calm your enthusiasm. Thank you. Where are we? Oh, it's me. Thank you. Melanie, Shannon, if you can just keep an eye on the chat while I take over. Thank you, everybody. I hope you've found that of use in terms of giving us an update on where we are in terms of policy and practice. I think obviously the basis of everything is these have been unprecedented times. In so many ways, and we were involved in some research with CEDA, funded by the Mayor of London last year, looking at the financial business challenges that were facing providers in the early years sector as we came out of the pandemic. This was last August. We were expecting to be coming out of the pandemic, and look, we're nearly 8 months, 10 months further down the line, and we are still in the medical emergency before we even get onto the economic emergency. So building on that research, the GLA and the Mayor of London have funded a 10-month program, which I want to just explain to you in a bit. It starts from now, running through until March of 2022. As I said, it builds on the research that we undertook last year, which hopefully some of you responded to the surveys and were involved in the forums that we undertook and gave us your views through those processes. It's being coordinated by the Early Years Alliance, but it isn't us just delivering it. It aims to work in partnership with the 32 London boroughs. So the close links that you have with your particular local area will hopefully be supported and enhanced by this programme. Also other sector organisations and training providers to deliver support. We are hoping to give a process of targeted support to all providers, but also to give some intensive support to those who are identified as being concerned about being the most in need. It's a very exciting project. The Alliance is delighted to be involved and leading this, and it's my function is to project manage it. And yeah, really challenging and exciting stuff. We are focusing down on 10 general management areas. I've listed them there. I don't intend to go through them, but hopefully you'll see in there that we cover the broad spectrum of challenges and opportunities that are facing early years providers at the moment, making sure your budget balances. There are particular issues about workforce recruitment and retention. How best to do your marketing, both in traditional means, word of mouth, etc., but also social media. Issues around governance for charitable based early years settings and for others. Potential for broadening income streams. I've included childminding there primarily not because it's a particular management area, but all of these issues seen from the particular perspective of childminders is something that we are particularly keen to cover. And I'll come on to that in a bit more detail as we go on. Also issues around staff management, and also I'm sure you're aware that there are lots of transfers of ownerships at the moment within the early years market, whether that's acquiring settings or practitioners deciding that their time is limited and looking to exit provision. So we hope that within those general topic themes, there will be something that supports and is of interest to all providers across the capital. The balance between provision, there are certain parts of the programme which are accessible to everybody. And then there are certain parts where we are targeting down on smaller numbers of settings and also one-to-one support where that is most appropriate. We are in the process of developing an information webpage, which will be housed on the London Business Hub site. For those of you who don't know the London Business Hub, I've put the web address there. This covers all businesses in the capital, and they're particularly keen on working with us on this project because this is the first time they've looked at a sector-specific element of support. So they are very keen that you register to receive regular updates from the London Business Hub website, and so I would encourage you to do so. Their website becomes far more accessible and has far greater functionality if you're prepared to give a few bits of information to them to register on the site. That will be the location of this project website in due course, but it is obviously going to take a bit of time to set up and launch. And so in the meantime, the resources that we will make available are housed both on the existing smaller site that was developed as part of the projects last year, but also on the Early Years Alliance's website, so which hopefully you will be able to access and be able to download from there. We will do monthly webinars focusing on those 10 topics, but looking particularly in terms of management issues in response to COVID-19. And as I've indicated, the next one will be at the end of June, 29th of June, and it's Melanie, myself, again, looking at the new EYFS and the Ofsted inspections starting up again. We felt that that was where people probably have the most focus of their attention at the moment. What if Ofsted come knocking on the door, and am I ready with my full understanding of what the new early years foundation stage looks like? We will also run smaller online sessions, which we call Business Connect sessions. These will be weekly throughout the program, covering the same range of business topics, but are far smaller. Instead of the several hundred people we've got attending with us today, these are limited to about 12 to 15, maybe 20 participants in each event, which does allow for people to chat more, to share their own experiences, and also to have a dialogue with their peers and hopefully develop networks going forward. So they will be repeated throughout the program. So if you miss one, there will be another coming along in due course. We're also looking to try and do them at different times of the day, recognizing that there's never one good time to do sessions. We're looking to offer them at different times, and one of them, which I'll come on to in due course, is 7:45 in the morning. So if you're that sort of early bird, we'll see how many people we get registered for that. We are also collaborating with the local authorities to develop some local specific surgery sessions, we call them, which we're hoping will be delivered in partnership with the particular local authorities, so that they can talk particularly about the issues that face their settings in their locality. Some of those will be online, some will be, hopefully, when restrictions start to ease, will be in person, and we can all meet up and share our experiences. As I indicated earlier on, these are delivered by not just the Alliance, but other training providers and sector partner organisations. So there is a range on the supply side of a huge amount of expertise and input from across a range of organisations, and we're delighted to be working with them. So the website will include a searchable web directory, which hopefully, if you input information about what you're looking to have support on, where you are, and what your preferred method of gaining advice and guidance is, that will lead you to particular resources. There will also be a dedicated telephone triage service, where if people would prefer not to give their information through the website, but actually talk to a human being, we'll be able to take information from them, give them some general advice, and if necessary, refer on to expert telephone support from Alliance and other provider experts in particular fields, whether that's budgeting or apprenticeships or any other aspects in the 10 business areas we've considered. But also, we are looking to offer one-to-one consultancies. A number of hours are set aside in across the 10 months of the program, where we will get to know settings in more detail with 3 to 4 hours of activity where we can walk you through particular areas of concern for your particular business. So I do think this, within the whole pyramid of support, hopefully you'll find something which can give you general advice, but also tailored more to your specific needs. So more information as we go on, but we want you to get involved in the program from the outset. As I said before, if you, by one of the consent forms that you have given by joining today's webinar, is you've hopefully consented to us contacting you with more information about the support program as we go forward. We'll send you updates about regular web developments, the events that are taking place, and any other forms of support, both the one-to-one and the expert advice that can be taken as well. We'd also like you to be our promotion. The best promotion is word of mouth. So if you can tell other providers in your networks about the program, the main contact for most activity is our colleague Jonathan Lucas, and that's his email there. So if you want anybody else to register to receive updates, can we invite you to just get in touch with Jonathan? He's eagerly waiting by his PC to receive requests from you. One of the innovative things we are looking to try and do is develop the skills and empower individuals from the workforce itself, rather than training providers and other business support organizations coming and telling you wise things. We want to actually provide an opportunity to develop your skills and for you to be able to act as a mentor to other providers in your area or online, other providers in London, across the capital. We think this is a really exciting opportunity. Volunteering is part of the long tradition of the Early Years Alliance, and we want to try and develop this as an opportunity for a number of people to share their skills and their experience with other providers in their area. The point we've got there is we're struggling with the name. London Early Years Business Support Program pretty much explains what it is, but it's not exactly catchy. So we've been racking our brains trying to think about what is a useful name for the program. And we've got a couple of suggestions there. And we'd be interested in your views either now or by email to Jonathan, as I said earlier on, just in terms of what you think says the essence of three major things. One is around this is London. One, it's around early years, and it's around management, effective management, and business support. Getting those three things into a nice, catchy title has been problematic. This is, I have to stress, this is not a Boaty McBoatface situation where we're tied to the most popular vote and whatever comes in. There are certain elements that we have to go through with the mayor's office in terms of what we put as an appropriate title. But if people have any particular views on that, strong or otherwise, do please pass them on to us, and we will develop the name for the program as we go forward. So what's next? As I've mentioned a couple of times, please a note for your diary. I haven't got the URLs for people to sign up, but they will be included on these slides when we circulate them around. It's taken us a day or two to set up the scheduling system, and so I haven't got the URLs to register for these particular events coming up yet, but they will be on these slides when we circulate them. So a date for your diary, please, is Tuesday the 29th of June between 6 and 7. That will be Melanie and myself again, preparing for your Ofsted inspection under the EYFS 2021. There are a range of Business Connect events taking place in June. First one being Wednesday, the 9th of June. That's a 6:30 start, looking at an introduction to digital marketing. The revolutionary one, Effective Management about Staff Supervision and Appraisal, is at 7:45 in the morning. We'll see. That was an idea from a colleague. He said, no, they'll love it. All right, we'll see how popular that is. Effective Governance for Charitable Early Years Providers on slightly later on Wednesday the 23rd at 6:30, and a business health check for childminders, so particularly focusing on the needs of childminders, looking at their management processes and how they keep their budgets in order and other factors. Slightly later, because feedback always tells us that childminders like to do evening sessions and anything else. That's Thursday, the 1st of July. Also, at this stage, if you'd like more information or would like to register interest in terms of the expert telephone advice or one-to-one consultancy, please let us know. Again, it's Jonathan as the first email point of contact. And hopefully, within all of this, you'll find something which will help you as we come out of the pandemic and help us to thrive in the future. Phew, I did that at a rate. Hopefully that made sense to people. Did I get any questions, colleagues? And I didn't give you a chance to interrupt me. I didn't take a breath.
I was waiting for you to draw breath, Michael, and the time never came.
You've waited a long time, Shannon.
There were a few questions. There was one from Sandra, who asked, will providers be able to contact you, having assessed that they are in trouble financially or otherwise under this programme of support? And if so, what criteria will need to be met to determine we are indeed in trouble and need to be booked in for consultation and eventually given some money to help bail us out?
I can start at the end of that. I'm afraid I don't have any money to bail you out. And I have to say, one of the interesting points about this whole programme is, let's not forget, the Mayor has no statutory responsibility for early years at all. All of the statutory responsibility sits with the 32 London boroughs. And so that's very much why we were looking to work in partnership with those boroughs, because it is down through that route that the financial settlements are made and the childcare rates are paid for. What we can do, Sandra, is we will not run a balance sheet over you to say you are sufficiently in trouble to get our support. We've avoided that completely. We are looking to focus those who we work with as being identified as facing the most acute financial circumstances. And we do have experts within the Alliance and the other partner organisations who can help with looking over finances and seeing how budgets are set, etc. And really, at this situation, I would suggest you just register that interest and maybe give a couple of details, nothing too extensive, to Jonathan, because I think it will be something that we can start to work through in terms of what is the most appropriate level of intervention we can give you at this stage. But please do rest assured, we're not looking to see balance sheets or anything from you in order to qualify for the support in the programme. That's not our game.
There's one from Anita. He says, hi, I'm a Sufficiency and Sustainability Officer for Kingston and Richmond Local Authority, Achieving for Children. And I'm very excited about how our providers will benefit from this project and excited about getting involved myself. How will you be getting in touch with local authorities for the partnership work so I can promote this? Smashing.
Anita, please drop me an email through Jonathan. I'm having a range of conversations with local authority partners at the moment. Magda Balika, who is the Early Years Project Officer on the GLA side, sent out a notification to all local authority contacts. I think it was just yesterday. But if you've got that, please do drop Jonathan a note and we will arrange a call and I can talk through what we can do within the Kingston process. So I'm delighted you're in a position to work with us. Thank you.
There are a few more coming in, sorry, Michael. One is from Shaheen, is just a positive comment, which is really welcome this initiative. The sector is full of passionate and experienced practitioners. Networking and mentoring within the sector is very welcome. Jerry has suggested the title, What About Les Biz, as a title, as in sounds like Les Mis.
London early sector business. I like, yes, thank you.
And Boda has asked, I would like to share the childminding session information on the 1st of July at our next childminder session. How do I get the joining information to encourage our childminders to join?
You will get that information. It will be on these slides when we send it out to you. We'll have all the URLs to sign up for that, and delighted, please. These particularly with childminders, these are the best promotion is through childminder networks. And so I'll be delighted if you can share that very broadly. Thank you.
Annamaria has asked, will you help facilitate early year settings, buddying up with others in their borough to enable them to skill share / volunteer in each other's settings to get ideas for how to be more productive and successful?
Annamaria, you're a delight. That's exactly part of the empowerment and the networking processes that we want this project to do. Can you please I'll make a note of the name, but again, just drop that information to Jonathan that you made this particular request on the first webinar, and we will actively follow that up. Thank you so much.
And Annamaria's also asked, if we can't make the sessions, can we access them afterwards?
That's interesting. So I see 7:45 is the school run time. Yeah, I knew there would be challenges in this. We will repeat the sessions. We generally don't record the Business Connect sessions. They are far more localized and personalized to those particular those who take part, but there will be others. They will be repeated, and we'll make sure that we do each of them at a different time so that we can make them available throughout the program to everybody, Annamaria, regardless of their personal circumstances. Thank you.
Sandra has suggested London Early Years Business Support, LEYBS.
Thank you.
For a name, and I don't want to lose, I left it because I thought it might be one for me, from Linda. Lots of surveys have been done on 30 hours funding, but nothing ever changes except for a few pence, nothing significant. A real increase would make a difference. I'm doubtful from historical evidence it will ever happen. I'm happy to take that one.
You please do, Shannon. Yeah.
I know, Linda, I agree. It's something that we are focused on. We are doing a lot of work at the moment behind the scenes on gathering some evidence as to why. I'm trying to think how much I can say at this point. Some stronger evidence to kind of push the government, and particularly the Treasury, and it's because it's the Treasury that makes the funding decisions on early entitlement funding, and we will be releasing that around the time of our annual conference in June. So we do have some kind of new things in the pipeline to help move the conversation on, is all I can say at this point. So around mid-June, if you keep an eye on our activity, hopefully you'll understand what I'm very cryptically referring to here. But I know, and we have argued often, that the 5 pence, around April increase is just completely insufficient, especially in light of the national living wage. But it is something we're still working on, and I know it's easy to get disheartened, but we're trying different angles, and we feel this latest one might have some impact.
Great, thank you, Shannon. That would be really useful. I mean, it is the one thing, and it came up with the question in terms of when can I get some money. We don't have that, and the Mayor does not have that. What we are looking at here is generating support for settings to make themselves as viable and sustainable as possible, but also to make sure the conversation is heard across both London's parents and London's businesses, because clearly one of the Mayor's main motivations for being in support of these programs and others is the recognition that there are two essential elements for a healthy, viable early years sector in London. One is clearly it's the next generation of children who we are learning and supporting their learning and development, and that means we are a strong capital going forward. And the other is London's businesses need effective childcare for their workers, and if you don't have that, then the whole business recovery coming out of the pandemic will be affected. So there is a real realization that that this is a web of influence, importance, and sustainability that we all have to work to try and do together. Thank you.
Anne has asked, is anyone on here from Hounslow Early Years? We have a forum this Thursday. It would be good to share this Childminders forum. So I don't know if there are anyone.
Anne, I'll make a note of your email address, which I'll be able to get from the recording onto the Zoom, and I will post some information to get it to you by Thursday in terms of those URLs, and we'll be able to give you some more information that way. Thank you.
Sadia has just said that it will be a big help for new nurseries if you arrange buddying up with other nurseries to get more experience.
Smashing, thank you.
And Patricia has said, for us, it's not the 30 hours, it's the very low rate for the EL2 that housing continues to be the problem. And even if the 30 hours was extended to 2-year-olds, it would not work with such a low rate. Is there any campaign on this? And Patricia, I can probably pick that up to say our campaigning is for the early entitlements, plural. So it's, I know over recent years there's been a lot of focus on the 30 hours because that exacerbated a lot of the existing problems on the 15 hours for 3 and 4-year-olds, but we're very aware that the funding rate for the 2-year-old offer is just as bad. And for those providers that do provide a high level of 2-year-old places, it is really putting pressure on finances. So in terms of, is there any campaign on this? Yes, it's all part of our campaign for better funding for the early years entitlement.
Thank you. I think that's my last slide. Yes, it is. In which case I'll stop sharing because I'm going across and hopefully I can see everybody that way now. Are we back? Great. Thank you to colleagues, to Shannon and Melanie in particular, but also to some excellent comments from everybody. And hopefully we maintain this momentum and enthusiasm throughout the entire project. I've just seen a couple of questions there. Janka, just to clarify, can the parent use the 15 hours term time only, or can we use them in half term? That's Shannon, that's you again.
So the 15 hours is for 38 weeks of the year. So some providers do choose to stretch the offer. So if you're operating across the full year, then you can decide yourself how you structure that, what parents are able to get. So parents get 15 hours, 38 weeks of the year, and that can be stretched as the setting allows. So it's up to you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. We've also perfectly timed it, just 3 minutes to 7. We will pick up all the things. We can keep track of the questions, and any that require specific responses we'll get back to. It just remains for me to say thank you to everybody who's been so involved in the chat today. We'll maintain this momentum and enthusiasm throughout the project. My thanks again to Shannon and to Melanie. Melanie, you and I are back at the end of June anyway. Just remains for me to say thank you and good night to everybody, and let's hope it stops raining. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.